Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're getting back into Likkutei Moharan, and we're going to be looking in the second volume of Likkutei Moharan. And we've spoken about in the past how the two volumes of Likkutei Moharan represent really two shlavim of encountering the teachings of Rabbi Nachman. Just like the Sefer Tanya split up into two books, one speaks to the Beinoni, which is the element of Bina within the individual, and the other one speaks to the level of Chachma, which is Shah Yichud Ve'emunah. So there's the sense of working on the self, which is the first volume. And then there's the sense of accepting the unity of God, which is the second volume in Tanya. And so you see this reflected also in Likkutei Moharan. Both Svarim are called Likkutim, Likkutei Amarim, Likkutei Moharan. That both of these tzaddikim, Rav Shneur Zalman of Liadi and Rabbi Nachman, are two elements of V'yalkut Yosef, two elements of the tzaddik Yesod Olam, two elements of the expression of Mordechai HaTzaddik in the world, which is drawing down the loftiest lights from above down to the lowest places imaginable. And just like we see in Tanya, we see this chiluk. The first volume of Tanya is about working through my stuff. Then the second volume of Tanya is learning about how to see beyond my stuff. And I have to know when I have to enter into each chiluk of it. If I'm in a process of working on myself, so then I want to look at Tanya. If I'm on the process of trying to accept the presence of God, where I don't have to really work so much on myself and I can rest assured in the infinite presence of God, so I look at Shah Yichud Ve'emunah. The same is true to a certain degree when it comes to the two chalakim of Likkutei Moharan. That in the first chelak, and we've spoken about this in the past, the first chelak starts off with Ki ish ha'Yisraeli tzarich tamid lehistakel v'haseichel shel kol davar lekasher atzma lehachochma sheyesh b'chol davar. That it starts with a command. It starts with, here's what you need to do. Just like Tanya starts off with, you take a swear that you're going to be a tzaddik and not a rasha. And from that place of knowing what we need to do, we enter into the struggle of trying to be who we feel that we need to be. So too in the first chelak of Likkutei Moharan, you see an expression of this is what you have to do in order to be a good yid. You have to be able to connect yourself to Chachma, to be mevatel yourself to each and everything. You have to be able to draw the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down into your own vessels. You have to be able to draw the light of infinitude down into human experience. That's the first chelak. In the second chelak of Likkutei Moharan, we start off with a very different type of teaching. In Tikkun Memshala, the first teaching of Likkutei Moharan, Chelak Beis, I just want to make sure I'm right on that. Yeah, Tikkun Memshala. So we have a very different perspective of what it means to be a human being. That teaching is all about why being a human being is better than being a malach. It talks about the fact that it simply is. Hashem has decided that the role of a human being in this world is higher than a malach. It doesn't matter that it's counterintuitive. It doesn't matter that that's insane because we fall and we struggle, etc., etc. Hashem decided that he wants us to serve him, and that's the place where the yichud is going to be miskala. It's our job to accept the existence of God. It's not our job to earn a sense of being in the presence of God. It's our job in the second chelak to accept the fundamental infinitude of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One of the elements about the second volume of Likkutei Moharan, and this is something that the Rebbe has been talking about as of late, and it's also very interesting. It's from this sefer over here, Sodos Shamayim v'Sodos Adam, from Rav Tzvi Mark. Rav Tzvi Mark is someone we've spoken about before in terms of the tikkunim in the process of Breslov Torah. He is the academic who really took the academic study, quote unquote, of Rabbi Nachman and his light from a darkened place into a very beautiful place. That prior to Rav Tzvi Mark, so the opinions that the Choikrim had on Rabbi Nachman's approach are not something that we'll say here necessarily, just because it's chutzpah. But ultimately, the perspective was trying to read their own inner experiences onto the writings of Rabbi Nachman, and it's not so difficult because Rabbi Nachman's Torah speaks to each and every person wherever they find themselves, and Mamela, wherever a person is holding, is what they're going to see. And so that first chelik of the mechkar, of the academic study, so to speak, of Rabbi Nachman, which is always a good thing because the academic studies of things create more seriousness to a discipline, to understand the historical circumstances, to understand the history of censorship within Breslov, a very rich history of censorship, because Rabbi Nachman's life was mysterious. But the Choikrim originally felt that, so we see here a like-minded individual, Kavyachol, somebody who, in Likkutei Moharan is revealing to us what it means to be tzibrachin, what it means to feel sadness, etc., etc. And then what Rav Tzvi Mark did was he came from an Orthodox place. He came ultimately from Gush. And he understood the depth of Rabbi Nachman's teachings to be not something new, not something that needed to be understood through the lens of some psychological reasoning, God forbid, but rather Rabbi Nachman was a fundamental revelation of the Baal Shem Tov that went even further than the Baal Shem Tov. And just like the Baal Shem Tov was a further revelation of the Arizal, who went further than the Arizal, and just like the Arizal was a further revelation of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who went further than Rashbi, and just like Rashbi was a revelation of Moshe, who went further than Moshe. Rabbi Nachman, everything about Rabbi Nachman's life is not only outside the realm of how we understand the role of the tzaddik in Pnimiyas HaTorah. Adrabah Ipcha Mistaber, Rabbi Nachman is fundamentally paving a path that has been revealed in all Svarim before. There's nothing strange, there's nothing mysterious. It's just a beautiful, 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 potent expression of Pnimiyas HaTorah. That being said, what makes the Torah of Breslov so powerful is that it speaks to each and every person wherever they find themselves. So one of the things that Rav Tzvi Mark points out, he gave us the new Sipurei Rabbi Nachman, May Breslov, the beautiful purple one, just beautiful, beautiful works that he's put out. Over here, he's showing, in this Sefer, what he shows is we know that Rabbi Nachman wrote 3 books. Rabbi Nachman wrote 3 books. Rabbi Nachman wrote Likkutei Moharan. Rabbi Nachman wrote a Sefer referred to as Sefer HaNisraf, which was a Sefer that he wrote, and then he commanded his Talmidim to burn, in order so that the smoke should be engraved within the sky itself. Then there's the Sefer HaNignas, which is a book that was written and concealed. And so they go in ascending order. First we have Likkutei Moharan, then we have Sefer HaNisraf, and then we have Sefer HaGanuz. Usually, the assumption was that these were 3 different books. But these were 3 different books, that we have Likkutei Moharan in front of us, and we lost the Sefer HaNisraf, and we also lost the Sefer HaGanuz. What he points out historically, and what the Rebbe has been talking about more emphatically, is that we're not talking about 3 different books. Or rather, we're talking about 3 different books, but we're talking about 3 different layers of a singular book. That all 3 chalakim of what Rabbi Nachman gave over are all embedded within the book of Likkutei Moharan. It's not that there are 3 separate books. There are 3 different perspectives and deepening in which a person encounters the text of Likkutei Moharan, that at first glance I receive Likkutei Moharan, just the teachings. Then if I dig down deeper, I see the Sefer HaNisraf, those ideas and those yichudim, which are not explicit within the text, but rather give me shape and insight to kind of look at my life and understand more of the subtleties of my own experiences in the lens of the tzaddik. Then there's Sefer HaGanuz, which is that light that allows us to see everything from the perspective of redemption itself. In Chelek Beis of Likkutei Moharan, as Rav Tzvi Mark points out, there's numerous places where you find that certain teachings that were said to have been part of Sefer HaNisraf and even Sefer HaGanuz, those books that were written and hidden or destroyed, actually remained intact to a certain level. And a lot of the shorter teachings in Chelek Beis of Likkutei Moharan are those kind of censored elements of the Sefer HaNisraf and the Sefer HaGanuz that made their way into Sefer Likkutei Moharan, showing us that it's a prat that's made on the cloud, that every Torah that a person is learning, especially in Likkutei Moharan Chelek Beis, where we're talking from the perspective of a Kadosh Baruch Hu revealing himself, no longer needing to put in all that effort. So in that place, we uncover the deeper elements of Likkutei Moharan, the Sefer HaNisraf, and the Sefer HaGanuz. What that means ultimately for me, and what I want to try and share in this Nakuda, is that a person can learn Likkutei Moharan, and it could just be like a nefesh orientation. I could just be reading the text itself, just reading the book that was written. And even that is enough to shake a person's worldview. Even that is enough to irrigate the dry bones of the individual. But to understand that as we read the words and as we look into the words, that there are layers that are scaffolded into the words, and that every sefer is holy, every book that's been written by true tzaddikim is holy. But there are certain books that contain levels upon levels upon levels upon levels where even if you don't know what teaching you're going to learn, even if you don't know what you're gaining from the teaching, and even if there's parts of the teachings that are not necessarily aligned with, the mahalach of the Torah, nevertheless, there's a certain segula to reading the words of Rabbi Nachman that gives a person a taste of something deeper than what we can possibly begin to imagine. And that all of that is a preface to say that as we get back into the book, so we'll trust that the book does its work for us, and the neshama of the tzaddik that rests in the book will do its work for us, especially starting in the second chelak of Likkutei Moharan Tinyana, where we already know that we're higher than the malachim. We already know that we're fine. We already know that everything's okay. We also know that there's hidden vestiges of ancient hidden levels of textual revelation that Rabbi Nachman plants in this second volume. So we're going to read it, but to a tefillah that the words should just go to where they need to go to, and this will be the hakdama to the new zman of learning Likkutei Moharan together. So we're going to learn Torah Tes in Likkutei Moharan Tinyana. Pasuk says in Yecheskel, El asher yihye shama haruach laleches yelechu. Talking about the Maisa Merkava, talking about the ruach ha'ofanim ba'ofanehem, that the spirit of the angels were within the wheels, meaning to say that the moving itself of the Maisa Merkava was as significant as the thing being moved. Just like by the Aron Kodesh, that the Aron Kodesh carried those who carry it. So too, the Merkava had an element of carrying those who carry it. Again, completely undoing and reorienting us to the nature of cause and effect and cause. How could it be that the thing that brings something someplace is in truth being carried by the thing that it's bringing? Rabbi Nachman even has a very strange teaching where he associates this principle to the stirrings of addiction and alcoholism, ultimately. This notion of, in AA, they have a line that, all along we thought we were, the horse driving the cart until we came to realize that it was the cart driving the horse. Again, a very similar svara to, I thought I was bringing something somewhere. And in truth, when I arrive, having delivered what I think I have to deliver, I come to realize that, wait a second, it's really been the thing that I've been delivering that has drawn me along all the time. And so Rabbi Nachman says, this is the reason that when someone brings wine to a chasana, when someone delivers alcohol to a simcha, this is shayach for Purim, that there's a bracha given to him. There's a bracha given to the person, and we say l'chaim. Why? Because yayin and intoxicants have the same quality of ruach hachayim ba'oifanehem, that it's something that a person thinks they're bringing to the party, but ultimately it's also something that a person can slowly but surely realize, I thought I was carrying this thing all along, but it's in truth been carrying me. And even though Rabbi Nachman says this is a powerful thing when it comes to the Merkava and the Aron Kodesh, and even by wine sometimes, Rabbi Nachman ends with a cryptic statement. He says, but a person has to be very, very careful that they don't allow the wine to fall into this place where I thought I was carrying it, but it was carrying me. So I find that to be a very powerful kind of point. But Zak the Rebbe, in Ostes, and Ostes is the Tuvo Ganas Bagabe, the goodness that is hidden within something that appears externally not so clear. So Torah Tes, Isa b'Tikkunei Zohar. We see in the Tikkunei Zohar and Tikkun Yud Gimel, Kula arkin deliba misnahagin basarucha, hadahu dechsev el asher yihye haruach laleches. That all of the extensions of the heart, all of the blood, all of the circulation that is coming from the heart, that is seemingly running the show, the lev is the melech beguf. Nevertheless, the motivating factor behind the heart itself is the ruach, is breath. And there's going to be an element of breath and breathing that's going to be motivating the heart itself. And the Tikkunei Zohar base it on this pasuk, El asher yihye shama haruach laleches yelechu. That wherever the breath is where the erkin of the lave, where that expression of the heart is going to go to. Dahainu, haruach hayoytze mekanfei hareya. The breath that emerges from the lungs themselves. It's the breath that drives the heart. It's the breath that allows the heart to calm itself so that it can express something. Left to its own devices, the heart will burn itself up into nothingness, like we saw in Torah Yud Tes, that the heart is burning towards the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that the heart holds the infinite light. And the infinite yearning of the heart would expire itself over and over if it were not for the kanfei reya de menashvin aliba, that calm the heart down, and they whisper calming words to the heart that say, don't worry, don't worry. Even though you're not running to where you feel you need to get to, you have to have that experience of Ratza V'Shov, which Rabbi Nachman says is expressed fundamentally in the most essential quality of being human, which is breath. Inhale and exhale. If it were not for the lungs and the air of the lungs that spread forth across the burning desire of the heart, the heart would incinerate the body, meaning the yearning and the teshuka of bina, of the heart, would go so far up, it would try and run all the way up to the infinite, that it would leave vessels, it would lose the ability to come back down. And the big chachma is to come back down. Bina burns and it burns and it burns and it wants to just go up. It wants to be removed from this worldliness. It's a fire that ascends upwards, like Nadav and Avihu. And if it's not with chachma, then it can burn itself out, God forbid. And it could be an eish zara. The ruach, the menafshin from the kanfei reya is the secret of chachma, the cool, calm, and collected waters of chachma that come to still the heart. Like the tzaddikim would say, still, still. They would say to their hearts, literally, calm down, calm down. Zak the Heilige Rebbe. Ki al yedei haruach mechabim haner umadlikim haner. Kenira bechush. What is it about breath? Breath has the ability to extinguish the flame, just as breath has the ability to illuminate the flame and allow the flame to grow in itself. It's a mixed bag. It's not only dousing the heart and the burning desire of the self that wants to break free from order and saying, no, 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 you can't do that. It's a mixed bag. The heart can be tamed by breath. Breath has the ability to not only quiet down and quell the intensity, but it can measure it. And it can allow it to be expressed in bite-sized, manageable pieces. The ruach can extinguish the fire, but it could also create the fire to grow. Kenira bechush, as we see in reality. That there are times where it's the breath of the breather that is going to extinguish the flame. And there are times where a candle is in the process of being extinguished, but by blowing upon it and by re-illuminating those embers that are still there, we have the ability to awaken that latent flame within it. So we see that the ruach has this dual quality to it. It can increase and it can decrease in accordance with what is necessary. The heart is burning, it's the fire. The breath is the thing that calms it down or increases it in accordance to the need. Ki kiboy haner hu al yedei shanoifel al haner efroriut v'nifradim chelkei ha'esh sheyesh bo miyesod ha'esh ve'enam yicholim libor ve'al kein keshemenafchin boy azeh haruach menafech min haner ha'efrorius. That the reason that the fire becomes extinguished is because there's a heaviness that rests upon the fire and the fire is no longer able to burn. And when the fire is covered over by a force that pushes down against it, and the heart is forced to kind of temper itself, so what happens then is the shirish of the fire, which is the singular desire to run upwards with a singular focus, like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, B'chad ketira aktarena, that I've yearned for you to connect to you with one singular burning desire. When that's covered over, when that's reduced and it's not given its full strength, so then the eish is mufrad, it separates itself, it dissipates from its intensity, and the heart begins to feel scattered. Pizor hanefesh, scattering of the heart when it's calmed down, when the heart is not able to express what it needs to express. But at the same point, even though at that point when the flames are covered over, it's not able to burn, for the very same reason, when we breathe life back into that flame, through the breath that we breathe out, min haner ha'efrorius, we awaken all of those residual elements of fire and we remove all of the concealment of that fire. And what happens then is that when the cover over the fire of Bina is removed, So then all of the chalakim of Bina, which now appear to have been separated and scattered, that they can't burn upwards, all gather their strength again. They gather their strength again. And therefore we see that there's times that we're able to awaken the fire after it's been extinguished with breath. And there's also times where we burn out that fire, or where we reawaken the fire through breath itself. So what does this mean for us? Manhige hador him bechinas ruach. The tzaddikim in the generation, the manhige hador. Now, the manhige hador are the svarim that we learn, the tzaddikim that we connect to, the living tzaddikim, the dead tzaddikim. Each and every person is a door. Each and every person is their own generation. Each and every person is the bridge between the past generation towards the future generation, Be'ezras Hashem. And therefore, each and every person is their own generation. And each and every generation has its own manhig. Each and every person has the manhig. Now, all of us are under the shlita of Moshe Rabbeinu and the tzaddikim and the Yechidei Hadoros. And then there's the tzaddikim in the generation as well, who are also reflected as the manhigei hador. And they're the breath of the world. They're the breath. Ruach Hapeinu Mashiach Hashem. Mashiach Tzidkenu, the truest manhig Yisrael, is breath. When Rabbi Nachman said to his Talmidim, Kishetesu mikan v'teshalu otcha man pa'altem, tomru ruach. That when you leave me and they're going to say, what did you gain there? Was it worth it to let go of everything? What did you gain? Rabbi Nachman said, tell them you gained how to breathe. Ruach Hapeinu Mashiach Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu, ish asher ruach bo. Person who had the ability to be mechavin keneged ruach v'ruach shel kol ish v'ish, who had that principled way of drawing down chachma so that it can speak directly to each and every person. The tzaddikim are the ruach. What does it mean that the tzaddikim are the ruach? As the pasuk says by Moshe, ish asher ruach bo. The paradigm of a leader is someone who knows how to utilize their breath, how to increase the flame and how to decrease the flame in accordance with the measure. Who knows the secret of going and speaking and breathing in accordance to each and every person. As they would always say about the tzaddikim, that one of the marks of the tzaddikim was that every person there felt that they were being spoken to directly. Because the ruach of that tzaddik, the measure, the air that is measuring the intensity of the Jewish heart, is going to be in accordance with each and every person. Each and every person, the Rebbe says on this klal, that the amounts of correct readings of a Torah and Likkutei Moharan are the amount of readers there are of a Torah and Likkutei Moharan. Because Likkutei Moharan undergoes a new process of being understood each and every generation. And not only that, but each and every person sees it differently. And it's not a stira to the emes of Likkutei Moharan. Adarabah, it's revelatory of a deeper emes. It's like we said, this could only be true if we know that there's a hidden depth to the book that's not even revealed. There's an infinite depth to the book. We see this also by the Baal HaTanya. The Baal HaTanya said, I want my book to be Yechidus for you, which is a stira minei ubei. Yechidus is each and every person gets exactly what they need. And I'm different than that person, and that person's different from me. And the Baal HaTanya said, I'm going to give you a book, which is going to be the same text for each and every person. But nevertheless, through the miracle of what the tzaddik is capable of doing through their ruach, each and every person is going to receive what they need from that book. So the tzaddik is the ruach, the measurements, the valve that increases or decreases the intensity of Nishmas Yisrael's grasp of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'Yisrael him b'chinas liba. And Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, we're the heart. We're the ones burning up to Shamayim. We're the ones burning up to Shamayim, where Moshe Rabbeinu has to elevate and increase and decrease and increase and decrease in accordance with our impatience, in accordance with, the hirhure leiv. So the tzaddikim are the ruach, and we're the leiv. Ki Yisrael him liba d'chol alma, because Klal Yisrael are the heart of the entire world, as the Zohar and Parshas Pinchas tells us. V'tzrichim manhigei hador l'nashev bebechinas rucham al kol echad meYisrael sheim libam de alma lenafech mehem haefroriyut dahainu hamarashchera shenofel aleihem. And what happens is that the heart of the world, which is the heart of each and every yid, so when it stops burning because of the heaviness that settles down upon it, which Rabbi Nachman here is saying is the midah connected with afar, which is marish chayra, despondency, hopelessness, the tendency towards a nihilistic perspective that says no rather than radically affirms a yes at the heart of everything. That the heart grows tired and the heart grows covered and the heart grows old. The heart grows old and the heart develops holes in it, God forbid. And the heart becomes like a vessel that can't hold the light that's there, and it either tries to overcompensate and burn higher and higher and higher than it actually can go, or it shuts it down entirely. And the reason, says Rabbeinu, is because of the marish chayra that rests upon the heart, and it doesn't allow that flame to burn upwards. And the manhigei hador, the tzaddikim, and each of us who become shluchim of the tzaddikim in our lives, we need to breathe life back into the ruach of our own hearts and to the hearts of each and every yid. Because the heart of the yid is the heart of the world. And the tzaddik's job is lenafich mehem ha'hafrorius, to remove all of the dust that has settled onto the heart, meaning to say the marish chayra that has fallen upon the individual. As a result of the heaviness of the heart and the kvedus halev, so Klal Yisrael, Rachmana litzlan, are not able to feel that burning desire to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're not able to live in accordance with that desire. And when a person is not able to live in accordance with the desire of the heart, so then we're stuck in between two difficult places, because the heart does not stop yearning for what it needs. The heart will get what it needs in the end of the day. It will find HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It yearns and it yearns and it yearns for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like the heart of the world that yearns and yearns and yearns for the spring that rests upon the mountain, as Rabbi Nachman explains in the third day of the Ma'aseh Mesheva Habatlarim. The impossible love quest and the undying desire of the heart to reach that which it desires. The heart demands to receive what it wants to. But if we don't believe that we can reach where we want to get to, so then we're just left with the endless desire of the heart, without the belief that this endless desire is tachlis oriented, because I've closed myself off from the tachlis, which is kirvas elokim litov. Why? Because the marish chayra has silenced the burning desire in my heart. But I'm still feeling that incessant not enoughness, which is the telltale heart that continues to beat underneath all of the afar. And a person is going to say, okay, my heart's bothering me. Let me fill it with this. Let me fill it with this. Let me fill it with this. Let me tame it with this. And ultimately, there's going to be moments of it being tamed and moments of thinking we found where we need to go in order to illuminate the heart. But it will always, always, always fail and bring us even deeper into marish chayra, because I thought I awakened my heart and I didn't awake my heart. So when the heart of a yid doesn't believe that it can reach all the way up to Or Ein Sof, and that it's Boer Ad Lev Hashamayim, so then we're left with the craving, the incessant craving, without any actual belief in the possibility of satisfaction, which is destruction, which is addiction at its core. And so the tzaddik needs to awaken the heart, because the heaviness of the heart, we can't scream out for what we truly want. Rabbi Nachman is saying, parenthetically for the tzaddikim as well, there's two things that can cause a Jewish heart to fall into slumber. There's my own stuff, and then there's just simply the historical, unconscious stuff that Klal Yisrael goes through. Erev Rav is nobody's problem but the tzaddik hador. Erev Rav is nobody's problem but Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to bring it in. And Hashem said, Moshe Rabbeinu, you're the tzaddik. The tzaddik does what he needs to do. And so I believe that what Rabbi Nachman is hinting to here is that sometimes a person will be able to identify why it is that their heart is broken, why it is that the heart is not burning, why it is in my own inner life, what I need to figure out in order to allow the heart to be illuminated. But then there's also going to be times where a person theoretically can't really figure out what's missing. Nothing is necessarily missing. And so a person doesn't have to be meshugana and think that if I can't find the source of the symptoms, I have to dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until I find this imagined cluster of symptoms, and I'm going to dig my way through myself, never finding anything. Because sometimes it's just like that. Sometimes the heart is just dead. Sometimes the heart is just not burning because of other people in the Welt, because of the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world. So if you can't figure out what's going on and why the heart is broken, then assume that the heart is broken and the heart is silenced because the heart is silenced, and it has something to do with other things, not necessarily me. And the tzaddik's job is still to awaken that heart, to awaken the heart to burn upwards to Shemayim. Va'al kein tzrichim manhigei hador lenafich ha'efrorius man halev dahainu mikol echad meYisrael. The Torah of the tzaddik, the Torah of the manhigei hador, of the yechidei hadoros, the job is to blow off the dust and the heaviness and the sadness that weighs down upon the Jewish heart from the heart of each and every person in Klal Yisrael. And through this, v'chayzrim v'neschabrim chelkei ha'esh shebechol echad v'echad meYisrael. And through this, the various disconnected parts of that flame that my heart so naturally feels, which have all been scattered into the places that they've been scattered to, all the places that I attach these broken pieces of my heart, affixing this endless desire to different objects and ideas and fears, etc. Through the words of the tzaddik, when we read the words of the tzaddik properly and we receive the breath of the tzaddik, what we're able to do is we're able to awaken each and every one of the hearts to allow those pieces of that broken fire to recorrect themselves, to yearn together again. Niskashin b'Yisrael b'yachad. V'nasim b'bchinas lev. All of those different parts that come back together and the heart is burning once again. V'chol echad ve'echad meYisrael nasa b'chinas lev l'makom shetzarech sheyeh sham b'chinas lev. This line I didn't see before. I didn't see this Torah before. That each and every person, why is the tzaddik breathing into each and every one of our hearts? Why is the tzaddik continuing to breathe into our hearts? Because each and every person needs to take their ownership over their role as the heart in the place that they are needed to be the heart in that place. The kol echad ve'echad meYisrael nasa b'chinas leiv, each and every person, each and every yid becomes the heart in the place that they're needed to be the heart in that place. And the heart returns to its burning towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ach lepa'amim kishemenashev ruach sa'ara az ayu mavir ha'esh ma'oid chutz min hamida. Okay, so what happens when the tzaddik breathes and the heart is awakening to the breath of the tzaddik, and the heart realizes that, wow, kamoini mamish, I can run up to Shamayim. I can live in dveikus. I can taste the or ki tov. I can be in a place of real bittul. I can be in a place of actual functional avodas Hashem rather than this endless tzimaon and thirst that is just painful. When a person begins to feel that, oh, I can do this. So avada, each and every yid can do it, but there's a danger in that sense, because when we feel that we can do it and we begin to believe in ourselves a little bit, because of the natural, unfathomable koach of Nishmas Yisrael, even the slightest belief in the self runs the risk of becoming too much. Riboy oros. A person tastes a momentary light, and they say, this is what my leiv has been searching all along. So there's a tendency, like we know in the realm of addiction, that l'dugma, you can have 5 people who can take a drink of wine, and the wine is providing them with a certain element of comfort. It's menashe of their heart, it calms their heart down. But then out of those 5 people, there's going to be one person, for whatever reason, that's going to see the wine as doing something far more powerful than what every other person is seeing it as. It's answering a far deeper question. And for a person like that, danger is real, because now they're just going to want more and more and more of what they're feeling. And that's Riboy Oros. Riboy Oros is okay. If I'm a Yid and I can do whatever I want, I could run to Ein Sof, then let me forget about the Kalim. Let me forget about the deadness of the heart. And Avodas Hashem is not about forgetting about the deadness of the heart, God forbid. It's about allowing the deadness of the heart to dance itself back into life, but not denying that the heart dies. Avada, the heart dies. The heart dies 1,000 times over each and every day. And it's from that Shivron Halev that we awaken the burning desire of the heart. So the Avodah is not to deny the reality of heaviness in this world. The avodah is to transform the heaviness into light, but there's going to be times when there's a ruach sa'ara, an intense stormy wind, a gust. It goes too far. The person is not able to be sovel. There's no kalim that can hold that light. It's shviras hakelim. And there are going to be times where a person goes even farther out beyond the lines. Shazeh b'chinas harisa. And then it begins to destroy something, not only my own life, but I begin to be unhealthy to others. In the aspect of pen yihirsula alois Hashem, like we saw by Nadav and Avihu, that when that fire is burning, to a certain degree, it doesn't care about the limitations anymore. And all it wants to do is give shape to that burning fire. And when Bina is given its shape without the calming stillness of Chachma, it becomes a problem. Because Bina, even though it's lower than Chachma, there's a moment where Bina reveals itself to be higher than Chachma, because Bina reveals that it has the capacity to push Chachma to a place that's even higher than it began. And in that process, Bina has a quicker route to Keser than Chachma does. The intensity and the burning desire of Bina can mainline itself directly to the place of Arich Anpin, where there's Ratzon, where there's deep desire. And in that place, Chachma is now lower than Arich Anpin. Chachma feels lower than Bina. And a person can say, all I want is this burning desire. But the secret of the matter is that Bina is never higher than Chachma. And that even though Bina can go up to Arich Anpin, which is the externality of Keser and Ratzon, Chachma goes into the interiority of Keser, which is Atik Yoimin, which is pleasure and calmness. And so Riboy Oros is always when a person thinks that, Bina, the severity, the burning desire, the gvuros of it all, that can bring me to the final destination because it's specifically from within the tzimtzum that I'm going to come to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu most. And it's true that motivational desire and intensity that comes from there is a vada more potent than the stillness of Chachma. But nevertheless, like we spoke about in the Zohar Shir today, the goal is always to come back to that stillness of Chachma. And so if a person takes too much Bina and the heart burns too high up, so it breaks free from all of the boundaries, and this is the shirish of Chatayim, this is the shirish of Chedei Tzadas. Ki b'mufa mimcha al tidrosh, v'asur laharis la'alois l'Hashem ma she'eno roi lo lefi b'chinaso. We can't, there's rules. Avada, each and every heart can go all the way up to Shemayim, and each person has absolute access to the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But a person has to know their role. A person has to understand what they understand, and a person has to, more importantly, understand what they don't understand. And Riboy Oros and Shviras HaKelim and all of the traumas are always about trying to reach a darga that one is not holding by. Not because I'm undeserving of holding there, but because a person has to be patient. A person has to be fundamentally patient and have the savlanus to wait. Of anazamin lemeheve. I know I'm going to get to Keser. I just know that I can't run there quicker than I'm able to. In this secret of b'mufla mimcha al tidrosh, that Rabbi Nachman says something fundamental in Chai Moharan. I thought about this today, this place in Chai Moharan. I wrote it in a note in a Kamarna Sefer that I was learning, that Rabbi Nachman says each and every person has their own b'mufla mimcha al tidrosh that's different than the other person. When Chazal say, don't look at that which came before or that which comes after, we might assume that that's a principled kind of metaphysical idea that we're not allowed to look at. And it's the same for everyone. Zok the Rebbe, no, it's not the same for everyone. Each and every person has their own ma'lifnim u'ma'la achor in accordance with their level. Because the main thing is knowing where a person stands in this world. As Rabbi Nassan himself said, that I can learn all the sugyos, but the one sugya that is rachok mimeni is where a yid stands. To know where a yid stands in this Welt is the hardest sugya in the world. And therefore, we have to be far more conscious of the limitations that we have to hold on to, rather than breaking through the limitations. Because the natural tendency of the soul is to run all the way up. And we have to understand that sometimes the deepest way of encountering HaKadosh Baruch Hu is knowing the limit as well, and not breaking through the boundaries. We have to know what our bechina is. Al kein kisharoa adam shaboer biyoter chutz min amida. And therefore, when the tzaddikim see a person whose burning desire of bina in their heart is burning up to Shamayim, but it's beyond the measure of the kli, it's riboy oros, too much light, yeda shezeh bechinas ruach sara. A person at that point can say, the reason that this person is struggling this way, the reason that I'm struggling this way, however we're looking at ourselves, is ultimately because the ruach sara, the stormy wind is too strong. Ve'eliyahu haya yachol lahachniazos, the light of Eliyahu Hanavi, the light of the Manhige Hador, the cool stillness of the Torah of Eliyahu Hanavi who brings shalom, l'rachok u'lekarov, who teaches us how to bring oros into kelim, always waiting for us in that place of revelation and concealment, by Leil HaSeder, opening and closing the door, by Bris Milah, cutting in order to reveal. Motzei Shabbos, in between Shabbos and Chol, Eliyahu Hanavi is that liminal figure. He's waiting there. He's by death and he's by life. It's the Shem Ban, it's the secret of Malchus. Eliyahu Hanavi knows how to calm down this light, creating more kelim. Zebechinas ish asher rachav al susei eish b'sa'ara, shaya roichev u'machnia susei eish b'sa'ara, lainu eish hadoylek biyotem in amida, shaba al yedei ha'sa'ara. That Eliyahu Hanavi knew how to ride the waves of flames that take place as a result of too much breath going into the light of that soul. Eliyahu Hanavi knew how to ride those waves of intensity and to calm them down as well. Eliyahu Hanavi comes to answer the questions. Eliyahu Hanavi comes to say, don't worry, you don't have to yearn so much. Tishbi yavo v'yataritz kushios ve'abayos. You don't have to get to the answer. I'll give you the answer, says Eliyahu. Calm down. The most important thing is for the breath to go in accordance to its measure, the mitgala, the balance. So that the fire of the heart should operate from a place of equanimity, equal. The light of Keser itself. When we mind the limitations, when we mind the boundaries of ourselves, that's where, Emir Hashem, the fullest light is going to be revealed.